Trish and Rob McGregor welcome you to a place where all kinds of phenomena flourish. Voices whisper ancient secrets, signs and symbols are abundant. UFOs, ETs, ghosts, and even the dead move about freely. Here we meet authors, researchers, and investigators of the mysterious, the strange, and of the inexplicable anomalies that surround us. Step out of the everyday world and take a journey into the mystical underground. And got it. Good. And so if you're ready to go, we can start in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Mystical Underground. Thank you for joining us. This is Trish McGregor and
Rob McGregor
and our producer and tech magician, John Posey. You can go to themysticalunderground.com where we make regular blog posts and where you can find out about our books. Among them are Phenomena, Harnessing Your Psychic Abilities, The Secrets of Spirit Communication, Sensing the Future, and Aliens in the Backyard. Our upcoming book is called The Shift, Reports from the Mystical Underground, and Trish's new novel, White Crows, will be out on May 24th. Rob has been slowly releasing the audio edition of Indiana Jones and the Staff of Kings.
Our guest today is Reverend Dr. Sharon-Elizabeth James, who 10 years ago founded the Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light in Sarasota, Florida. Earlier in her life, she underwent 4 years of intense metaphysical and spiritual training in Theosophy, New Thought, Spiritualism, and ancient and contemporary religious beliefs at the Spiritual Science Center of New York. She has a doctorate degree in Theosophy and Divinity and was ordained in June 1989. The same year, she made Florida her new home. Welcome, Sharon-Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Sharon or Sharon-Elizabeth?
I go by Sharon-Elizabeth. I brought in that Elizabeth energy early on. There's a whole story about that. You know, we all have these stories, how things intertwine and how we manifest.
Okay.
Let's start in your bio. In your bio, you say that you experienced cosmic consciousness at the age of 2.5. So what exactly happened that you remember, and how did it affect you at that age?
Well, most certainly how it affected me is that it put me on this path, you know, ever since, seeking to get that back on this journey. But yeah, I actually have my memory from 1.5 years. So, and even prior to that experience, I remember vividly, my parents were having a party. There was a party going on. And I was actually in the crib in another room, but I could hear the noise and, you know, people. And ever so often, people would come in and check on me, specifically my mother and my aunt. So I remember them coming in. It's very interesting because as I think about it now, there was a doll, and it was like a fabric doll, a stuffed fabric doll, but it had a pointed head. So it's sort of like, if you remember Saturday Night Live, they had the cone heads. So it's like I had this cone head doll that was the same size as me. And so I think about it, I said, that was my first encounter with an alien, I think.
In the crib.
Little did I know what was to come. But at any rate, at 2.5, I was about 2.5 years old because, you know, I had asked my mother, you know, like the timeline on this, and they lived in an apartment in New York, different from the other place where I started growing up. So I know for a fact it was very, very young. And I was just standing by a white wall in my parents' apartment. And then all of a sudden, I just had this sense of, you know, omniscience, omnipotency. I was one with everything. It was beyond my little 2.5-year-old body. It was beyond, you know, whatever little brain I had going on at the time. It was way beyond that. It was another level of myself, being one with everything. And in that experience, of being one with everything. Okay. I had like the communication that I've been here before. I have a mission to do. Um, and I feel that what that experience did for me, even though in my little physical 2.5-year-old body and brain, I couldn't comprehend what the heck happened, but it left a mark on me. It was almost like, don't forget. I feel like it was imprinted with a don't forget your cosmic memory. Don't forget. And so as I got older, part of the things that happened after that is that early on, maybe I don't know, 5 years old, 6 years old, when I begin to see what the world is like, I'm like in complete horror and shock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be here. I was like, really, honestly, I was so upset. I was upset with, I guess, God, that I'm on this barbaric planet, that I was just dropped over here and I was abandoned, and I'd look up at the stars. And I mean, I still have abandonment issues. I still have abandonment issues. But it was like it was very traumatic. And that's what it is. It was very traumatic. I had this sense that, oh no, there's a big mistake. There's a big cosmic mistake here. I'm not supposed to be here. But then, of course, after a while, I am here. So I had to settle for the fact and go through your regular childhood things. But I do believe that whole experience that I had at 2.5 most certainly set me on a spiritual path from then, that I kind of questioned everything in this world from very young. So I was brought up, I was sent to Catholic elementary school. I ended up going to Catholic high school. And so most certainly I became aware of, like, the Jesus the Christ, and, the Divine Mother and the saints and all of that, which is a premises to what I call the Ascended Masters today, which, I primarily work with, and a real strong connection to Divine Mother, and of course the Christ consciousness. I used to make a joke. I said, at one point I thought that Catholic school beat the Jesus out of me, but guess what?
Yeah.
Circled all the way back around. And like, oh my gosh, it is real.
Trish and I went through the same experience with the Catholic religion. I remember as a kid in like summer school, going to these sessions that we would have, and I got a chance to sneak behind the altar looking for God, and I couldn't see him. I was just really disappointed.
Yeah, I know, where is he, right?
Yeah.
And of course, in the icons that we see, they're always pointed here. This is where it is. It's inside here. It's in that higher heart, of compassion and unconditional love. Yeah. So, but pretty much, yeah. I would say that was a defining, point in my life, here upon this earth. Very interesting. It was I never lost it. I mean, I got distracted with other things, but I never lost that, because I remember being in elementary school, and, they had the catechism at the time, and, this is the way it is. And so there were certain things that I was confused about, because, they had the Bible, they're very focused on the New Testament. I know that, but I said, well, what about the Old Testament? So, don't worry about that. That really doesn't matter that much as to New Testament. So as a kid, I'm like, well, why do they have it in the book? I was like, so, God bless, I listen to little children because they're so innocent, and like, they're like, this isn't making sense to me, or, they're still so pure of heart. But then another defining time, I would say, and very, very young, I experienced, well, first of all, I don't think I was fully connected in my body until after kindergarten, and so I felt like I was observing myself, which I've come to know to be what I call the neutral observer. There's a higher part of yourself, and you're sort of observing. It's almost seeing yourself in a play and all the different characters. So I had that feeling, I think, up until just after the kindergarten. And then when I went into the first grade, it was a beautiful nun, and she really came from the heart of compassion and unconditional love, what I call a golden heart. And in fact, she became a cloister, as I understand. So in first grade, I experienced this love, from this woman. And in second grade, it was the complete opposite. Second grade, I feel like encountering Christ. So early on, and I could see, I had the intuitive and the perception to perceive what some things that seem hypocritical, saying one thing but doing another. And in the second grade, is the first communion of those of you who are familiar with how that works in the Catholicism. And then the other little confusing part was, confession. And I was like, well, I don't, think I did anything, to warrant to confess a sin, And
I don't feel bad. I used to make up sins and confess.
I know. It's like, oh my God, a panic. What are you going to do? I don't know. So, I got up late. There goes a sin.
So much.
So, it was almost like, I don't know, this is kind of crazy. And then early on too, I think I've been like in the third grade at this point, I started asking these kind of deep questions. So on one of the questions I had asked, I was said, well, how can a God of love create hell forever? Like, there's no reformation. That's it. We're throwing it out. I said, isn't this supposed to be a God of love? Like, yes, there can be some, karma and, a gazillion years, but at least there's a way of getting out, something like that. And so that didn't make sense to me. So I asked the question, I raised my hand and I asked the question, I said, well, how can a God of love create something where there's, in so many words, what I was saying, that no one has an opportunity for forgiveness, or I made a mistake, because I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was in trouble, like, so, and the other part was that if there was a mortal sin, you didn't get the last act of contrition, or you didn't get to go to the confessional, you had that mortal sin, you're in hell like forever. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I was very concerned about this, very concerned. So I asked this question, and this was another defining point I remember clearly. The answer I got was not an answer, because I guess it was such a deep question that, the teacher, the nun, didn't have a ready answer for that. So instead, what she did, she deflected it by saying, well, that's a stupid question. And if nobody has an intelligent question, then don't ask any question at all. Well, of course, that shut everybody up. Okay. But under my breath, I said, it's not a stupid question. And I think at that point, I became a renegade. I think that was the defining moment. I became a renegade. And then the other thing that I did that was kind of pushing me to be an independent thinker, to be a seeker of truth, and not get constrained into a certain, a belief system that you can't go out of. There was a couple other things. I was very concerned about those people, because at least in the age that I was brought up with this, it's like you have to be Catholic. And by the way, Roman Catholic. Forget Greek Orthodox, that's not even part of it. Roman Catholic. That's how you're going to get to heaven. If you don't have that, then you don't get through those pearly gates. And I was concerned about all the beautiful, wonderful people who were not Roman Catholic. I said, well, what about Aunt Mavis? And what about, so I was worried. Ever since I came to the planet, I've been worrying. So I think they don't get to go. And so I was like, this makes no sense. How can they not go? So this is the test that I did, that I really seal the fact, you know what, I'm taking this, I'm going to find out for myself. And that was when I asked one question, and I did my own experiment. And at the time there was a nun, brother, and priest. And I think it was the St. Joseph nuns. It was the Franciscan brothers. I'm not sure which, I don't know if they were Jesuits. I'm not sure which one the priest was at the time. But at any rate, I asked this one question, each of them. So one nun, one brother, and one priest. And I got three different answers. I went, aha. So my answer is just as valid. No one said the exact same thing. So at that point, I became very empowered. And I just decided, you know what, I'm going to check this out on my own. I'm going to talk to, Jesus and so forth. And, at one point there was a disconnect with Jesus in that I was searching, because it was the Jesus on the cross. And I never kind of related to that, the cross, and you have to suffer, and then after that you can get to heaven, be happy ever after. And somehow I didn't feel that resonated with me. What stayed with me, however, my entire life, I went to a beautiful church. It was called Our Lady of Lourdes. It was built after Lourdes in France, and it was in Brooklyn, New York. And it was a cathedral, and it was magnificent. It was really beautiful and regal. And there was a stained glass window of Mother Mary in this very specific area. And, at the time they have, I don't know, this is to myself, these clickers, like they have the little kids dressed up in the veils, and special ceremonies, and you have to walk in a straight line, stop, make a left turn, very regimented, and don't mess up. Definitely don't mess up. And so at certain times when I'm questioning things, I was always look behind and asking this picture I saw of Mother Mary, and just having this silent communication, meditation, if you will. I just felt this loving presence from who I understood as Mother Mary. And that has lasted throughout my entire life to currently. She's very much, she's about the peace. I've had experiences with her, and that there is supposed to be, needs to be the rise of the divine feminine to equalize or bring into better balance divine feminine and divine masculinity. Mm-hmm. And bringing in that higher trinity has been lacking, or not that connection to make that stabilization, so we don't have this polarity imbalance going back and forth.
Yeah, but look at the world now.
Exactly.
Now everything's out of balance.
Exactly. Now, let me I actually have a program here. I don't know if I can put my hands on it real quick, but I had an experience in 2010. And in 2010, I was in a deep meditation. Actually, I was on an acoustic sound bed with a lady named Reverend Robin, who's one of the ministers here at the Cosmic Center. And I went into a very deep meditation. And in this meditation, I found myself, which was like, interestingly enough, like Lourdes. It was like water trickling down these rocks like a grotto. And I found myself climbing up. It was a whole experience. I even saw a Pegasus, a white horse, with the wings, and helping me to, like, guiding me to go higher and higher. And I go into like this ethereal temple, beautiful. And way up there in the corner, I'm seeing like in a diamond, a figure that looked like a woman. And it was like, I knew looking up at that it was, the Divine Mother, who I call Mother Mary. It comes in many different forms, but that's what I call. And in that moment, I received this telepathic, or I guess that's the best word I could use for it, but this divine impression, if you will. And she said very specifically, I wrote it down. She said she needs somebody to hold the polarities in balance. She said in 2010, she said that there will be extreme polarities, and that extreme polarities causes wars, the possibility of civil war in the United States, actually, a civil war. She said that she needs light workers, that do not get involved in the polarity swings on this vibration of drama. This is where she said you have to come from the neutral observer And remember, I had experienced a little bit before. So this was saying, and she said, you cannot participate, like, for example, Republican and Democrat, smoker, non-smoker, male, female, all of those things like jokes or whatever. No, no, no. She said, somebody calling to light workers needs to hold the polarities in balance, because there's going to be a time of these extreme polarity swings. And sure enough, okay, that was in 2010. And we know what's going on right now. And so one of the things that I do say here, and I tell people, I said, you have to leave all that drama at the end of the door. First of all, that cannot come in here. This is a spiritual frequency that we maintain, and we hold the balance. We walk that middle path and don't engage, personally or otherwise. We have our own opinions, of course, and our own divine discernment. I'm not saying, but not where you watch something and want to kick into TV, not where you allow something to cause you to go into rage, not that level. You have to keep it up here so we don't have that.
So
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. So in July of 2007, you began hosting meditations every Monday evening, and that was before you opened the center. What was it that prompted you to start the group meditations, and what are the meditations like? And is there an overall purpose that you're striving for in these meditations?
Well, I've come to find out that more than meditation, I now call them transmission meditations, because really it's a transmission. That was a very interesting journey. So at some point, a couple of things happened. So let me go back, and for your listening audience, some may relate to this or they may be in it. I remember now I'm after college, career and all of that stuff going on. And I've always had this awareness with me. But then it came to a point, I think it was way back, in the 80s. I knew about Mount Shasta. I'd always been on this path. But now I want to focus on career and, getting married and all that stuff. So I said, at that time, I said, I know, but I tell you what, I promise I'll do it the second half of my life. I promise, right? And you know what? That was it. I was very much into the world around me, although it never left me, but my focus and attention was on other things. When I turned 50, right? Have you seen The Matrix? When Neo gets that thing behind him. Well, it was something like that. And it was a result where I was connected with this particular church, and it was a spiritualist church. And, I was always intuitive, so I could do some work, but there was something else. And at the time, let me just regress a minute. I had an experience in 1989 of which is what you will see, the name of our logo. It's round and it has this. Let me show you something. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Well, this is what happened to me when I was in college, right? And so it's called the universal cause. And basically what it says is that it's all one. That was the next impression. It's all one, all one. And at the time, they didn't have the vocabulary like unity, consciousness, and oneness. They didn't have the vocabulary back then, but that's what it meant. 33 years later, okay, there goes the symbol, okay, as manifested as the cosmic center of spiritual light. And I just want to tell people, there's a divine timing and everything. And at one point I was like, well, I guess this is not supposed to happen. I always thought I did a visualization chart and I felt that I should be like head of a church or something, from way back when. And then when I had this experience, well, maybe it's, going to be a church in some point, I don't know. And 33 years passed because I didn't know They're like, no, you're not. Yes, I much respect for spiritualists. There are people that I've seen such great healing, knowing that their loved ones are okay. And I know many other spiritualists, high-powered spiritualists that can do that. But the understanding that I had is that, no, that's not where you're at. And I had an experience where I saw the galaxy, and they were like, no, you're cosmic. You're in this bandwidth. This is where you're at. That's home. Of course, it took years for me to get to that level, to go beyond, beyond, beyond. And so the anchoring light, to answer your question, Rob, is after 50 years old, I did a, oh my gosh, I have it right here. I had this calendar of the goddesses. And I was in, at the time, a very patriarchal kind of controlling environment. It was sort of like a love-hate relationship, because they didn't want me to say Father, Mother, God. This is a long time ago now. And I said, I will always say Father, Mother, God. You can't stop me from saying that. But I was always about the goddess, the goddess, the goddess. And so I found this calendar, I think this is from 1991, that had these beautiful pictures of the goddess. And I held on to them, because I said, I'm going to have to do a workshop on this. I'm going to do a class on this. And the best way for your own path is to teach. To learn is to teach. So anyway, I held on to this for, I don't remember how many years. It was a long time. And then, remember Dan Brown, when his book came out? Okay. And then, it was the whole big rage about that, and about the Divine Mother. And that's when my opportunity at this place where I was at, these men came up to me, the pastors, and they said they wanted people to come to the church to learn. And they said, that father mother thing that you do, and I said, I would really like to do a class on the Divine Mother, on the goddess. And they said to me, well, yeah, okay. They finally said, okay. So I ran through that opportunity, and I got to do that. And I said, what am I going to talk about? Okay, there were so many books. The Red Tent was around at that time. And so I went to this bookshop. Those are all the goddesses. I went to the bookshop, and there was a place that had like 5,000 books, like used books on the top thing. It was surrounded by books. A book literally fell to my feet. And it was by Barbara Marciniak. And it was, I didn't even know the word Palladian. I didn't even know the word at the time. I said Palladian. It was the Living Library. Earth, the Living Library. It had a picture of an egg on it. It's a book, the book. Yeah.
It is a good book.
Yes. And so I picked it up, and I just opened up to a page. You know how that goes. And it was called Galvanization of the Goddess. I went, oh, this is it. So anyway, I took the book, and at that time, I'm working, I'm a single mom, I have to have bullet points, get right to it. So I knew that would be the book. A wonderful eclectic group of women came together from different backgrounds, and we had this discussion group. And I said, you know what, we could just hand it to the Divine Mother and let her kind of direct everything. I just remember saying that. And all I can tell you at that time, I guess it was my promise that I would do it the second half of my life, is that I had, if you remember the movie, The Matrix, with Neo, I had such a download that I felt I was raising out of my bed. I had to say, slow down. It was for a week. I was walking around with my eyes like saucers. They were like this big. I was like this. Okay, but then after I had the experience, there wasn't anything like I didn't know. It could be the most complex mathematics, physics, chemistry. Gee, I could have used this when I was at school. I just had this higher understanding of everything. And then the next situation that happened, I had what I call a dream experience. They're not really dreams, but they're dream experiences. And in it, I found myself like in a Colosseum, how you would see the Roman Colosseum, and there was thousands of people around. And at the center looking down, I see like, these like majestic beings. And so I'm looking around like, hey, what am I doing? What is this place? Where am I at? And everybody's looking at me. I'm like, what? They're all staring at me. Anyway, I go down there and I'm given this huge book, which I call the Book of Earth. And in this experience, this being, I'm not sure it was Thoth, because Thoth came to my life at this time. But my eyes can only go as far as the shoulders. I couldn't see from here up. And they hand this book, which is a huge book. I open it up, and it wasn't like hieroglyphics. What it was like how you would do water paints, like the colors. And the colors spoke to me emotionally. And I remember being in shock. I was like, what? Oh my God, what? What? And it was like telling me about the earth, what was going on the earth from a cosmic perspective. And whatever glasses, rose-colored glasses I had on, those were knocked off. And I remember holding the book like this and saying, I know I can only do good with this. Right after that, okay, this has all started this rapid now unfoldment of information and guidance. And right after that happened, my son, the People to People program by President Eisenhower. Remember, he started that. And so my son was in middle school at the time, and this program came to be, and he ended up participating in that. He actually went to China for like 3 weeks. But on that brochure, it said the purpose of the People to People program was for young people to cultivate peace, because governments never will. And I was like, what? What do you mean? This is way back when now. Governments never will. Doesn't everybody want world peace? That was under my impression. Doesn't everybody want this? And then I started getting what I call more, I would say were more telepathic at the time, like these ideas that would come to me that was not originating from me, because this was like stuff I didn't know. And it's like I made a contact with President Eisenhower. He's long been dead. I only knew him when I was a little girl. And then I'm guided to these videos. That's how old this is how long ago the video cassettes. And there was one that featured him, and it was the military industrial complex, what that was. And then very synchronicity, somebody gives me this, now I'm attracting this, a thing about black helicopters. I'm like, black helicopters? What the heck is that? Well, all I could tell you, okay, during this time, it was like boom, boom, boom. But guess who also came? Guess who also came to me? Who I know to be, and I say it out loud because I know who I am and what I'm connected to, the Illuminati. I was recruited, and it was done in a specific way. I know one other person the same way it happened. They don't come out saying this is who we are. But anyhow, I received a letter. You remember, I'm busy, single mom, working. I went to the mailbox, and it has to be something there quick, or else I'm out of it. So I saw something. It looked very different, this envelope. It was a par avion, if you remember those. It was the red and blue like border around that, and it said Henderson, Nevada. I was like, what the heck is this? Anyway, and it was typewritten like an old typewriter, not like a computer. So it looked strange. So that's what let it open up. It was I think it's either a 6-page or 8-page letter, like letters typed like this. And who has time to read that? Well, I just started with the first sentence. It had my name on there, and it said things that were so intimate to me that, it started off with, you've always sensed there's something more beyond this world. You've always known this. And you could see like puzzle pieces into the future, which I could. I was like, who the heck is this? So anyway, I ended up
standing. Do you still have it?
Huh?
You still have the letter?
I still have it. Yeah, I still have it. And I ended up reading the entire thing, standing there, reading each page to the end. That's how intense this was. So it had at the end, like, you get this book and it gives you today. So it takes you on this little journey. But at some point, this is what it said. And this is how all the synchronicity comes in. It said, you and yours, because they said this is for you and your descendants. It's like a special club. Okay. And how happy they will be that, you have this. And if you only know the who's part of this. And, so it had that component to it. But then it said, you don't have to worry. You and yours do not have to worry about the earth changes. You will be protected, right? I said, well, what about everybody else? That was my concern. Like, okay, but what about everything else? And I remember having a knot right into my solar plexus when I read that. And then it also went on to say, oh, if you know how the mind works, you can, like play games of chance, like, gambling, and you would win and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, long story short, it kind of roped you in like this. And just before, okay, I guess the next step was to meet and all of that, I read from the Palladians, my best friends now, right? And I'm reading Barbara Marciniak's books. And, she shared information, similar information. She went to Egypt in the Great Pyramid. I went to Egypt in the Great Pyramid. So it was so much I related to. And then one of the questions was, how can you tell the difference between light and darkness? And one of the responses the Palladians said, light is inclusive, dark is exclusive. I went, that's where that knot came in. They were exclusive, not inclusive. It was the Palladians and all these other things, these divine synchronicities that opened up my mind to be clear, okay, as to who I was and where I was going.
Who
and
wrote
so,
the letter? Do you know? Who wrote the letter?
You mean the what I've come to find out afterwards, right? After they did it, they said that they were the Illuminati.
Oh, and they wrote the letter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They were the ones that were doing this, reeling you in. It's so what it would be a letter, and then you would read what they sent, and then you would, then you go to the next level and say, okay, so they keep you like on this path. And then it got up to the point where I start reading, they talked about the bicameral mind and very scientific and what you can do. So it's all the way up to this point. And then it was like, I believe it was the next step. I would have actually met people, right? And they look for, I think they look for people who may have some, I'm not sure what their criteria is, maybe some psychic abilities, maybe it's DNA driven. I don't know for sure. But all I know, at the same time that they were doing this is the same time a whole enlightenment, we're given the book of birth with President Eisenhower, with the black helicopters, where all of this was going at the same time, all the way to the Palladians that said, how do you know the difference between light and dark? Okay. And when they said light is inclusive, dark is exclusive, I knew in my heart that. And then I learned about the Illuminati, and I went, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm clear on this. I'm crystal bubbling clear on this. And so I shut that down and, moved to the, to the light.
So basically they were trying to recruit you.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And they go on, they recruit quite a few people. If you don't know better, they're going to lure you with, this is an exclusive club, and, this is only, these deep inner secrets of what's really going on and all of that, which is, listen, there's things out there. It's your choice whether you work with the light or dark. Okay. Dark is what I consider service to self, where light is service to others. And so, of course, I have a much broader, higher understanding of that whole dynamic. I do study the keys of Enoch. I study the Gnostic Gospels. I study this level of understanding the dynamics of how did things come to be on this planet? Why are things the way they are? And most certainly, I think if anybody looks at the world, you could say there's some kind of counterforce coming in, but it's not a local story. It's a much higher cosmic story.
So this
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you get involved in the Spiritual Science Center of New York and taking this 4-year study?
Yes, it was very interesting because at first I thought I was going to be a unity minister.
Okay.
Now, let me say this. This is very interesting. So, in elementary school, I think it was early on, I had the sense that I should be a leader. I don't want to say something. I am the most reluctant leader. Okay. I mean, I'm like, they have to pull me out and say, get up in front. I'd like to be behind the scenes and nobody knows who I am. That is not the case. I'm now out there into the public. But I knew from very young, there were things I had to get over my shyness. I had to get over my fear of dogs. It's just certain things that you have to move on this path. I knew I had to do these things. And so at some point I said, I really feel that the idea that I should be head of a church, or the only thing I knew at the time was a church. Like, I think I should be head of a church. So when I was in elementary school again, I said, you know what, I want to be a priest. And they said, oh no, you can't be a priest, but you could be a nun. And I was like, no, I know for sure it's not nun, because the dynamics back then, I know it's not a nun. Of course, they didn't tell me I could be a priestess, but anyway. And it was very interesting. Just a little sidebar, a little humor. So all these many years later now, I actually officiated a wedding for a former priest. And it's just a beautiful man. And at the reception, he was like a priest for 40 years. And he talked, how he loved God, and, that for his life, he needed love in his life. And so there wasn't a dry eye anyway. But anyway, where they had the wedding and where I officiated, many of his friends came, many of them older, right? And I'm there officiating. I'm looking around with all the guys with the collars on. And I said, this is interesting because it reminded me of those same guys telling me I couldn't be a priest. I said, here's the priestess. But anyway, I found that very funny and very humorous at the time. But to answer your question, I guess what it was is that when I had this feeling that I should be head of a spiritual or head of a spiritual a group, because somehow I felt that this was something I was supposed to do. And then how that came about, Rob, was, again, the levels of awakening. And I always told people there's a divinely appointed time, because after I had the awakening with the Palladians are the ones, I will tell you, the ones that put in the head that they need to anchor light to the planet. They need groups to anchor light to the planet. And there's a whole thing with that. So I want to tell your audience, sometimes you don't understand everything. So I just said, okay, I'm going to do an anchoring light meditation. And there were people who showed up. I said, okay. So I just started to do the meditation, and they came back next Monday. And I was like, oh, wow, they're still coming back, because this is, you're unsure, you don't know. And then what I realized I was always doing meditations from way back in New York. I always felt that we need to come together and meditate, that we need to have that connection. I didn't realize that it was preparing me to be what I call a channeled meditation transmission, that it's not me, it's something else connecting to. That didn't come to me. I just started to open my mouth. But when I was trained at the New York City, New York Spiritual Science Center, they had something called inspired lectures. When you look back at your life, you could see how things unfolded to bring you to where you are. And so the inspired lectures, I could say, was a precursor to channeling, because they would get up there and say, okay, talk. It's like you didn't write anything down. Whatever the topic was, it would be inspired. So I was trained with inspired lectures that led to this, I guess, strong connection to be able to channel higher, which I come to understand. They have been, I call it the collective, but it's mostly the ascended masters, of light. It is sometimes the angelic beings and star beings. And I come to understand that now, but during the journey, I wasn't sure. And the guidance I got with that is you don't have to know everything because you can't. And that's where the faith comes in. And you just take one step at a time, one step at a time. And then as you take that one step at a time, you begin to understand more. You look back at your journey, you understand why things are. It is truly a spiritual journey for all of us.
Okay, you talk about the Pleiades. Now, have you seen a UFO? Have you had an encounter, a
Oh, yeah.
physical? You have.
Yeah.
Mention?
Well, okay, so let's see. So after all this awakening, the dream experience talk, the book of birth, all of that, I'm like this. Okay. I actually have these earrings on. If you can see them, has a piece of moldavite. So there were changes going on in my life at the time, and I ended up going to a gem show that was here in Sarasota, Florida. And I go by and I see moldavite. I've never was familiar with moldavite.
I have those same earrings.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Oh my gosh, I keep them on all the time. And I'm never without moldavite. So anyway, at this time, I see a lady and she talks about moldavite, and there's a book about moldavite. I see the earrings, I buy moldavite. I know when I put these earrings on, it helped to change my life forever. It put me in a trajectory. So I bought some pieces of moldavite. I'm reading the book and I'm doing a meditation. And when I'm doing at home, and when I'm doing the meditation, I see as clear as day, what you call a flying saucer. It was round. It just came right in my third eye awareness, and I was like, and I never before connected like UFOs, or extraterrestrials and spirituality. I never connected the two. And then at some point I realized like, wow, this is part of the spiritual path, is the awareness of these extraterrestrials. And then I did the research and realized the Pleiadians. I have a particular connection with the Arcturians, very, very strong connection with Arcturians. And of course the Andromedans, and of course that whole thing. So that was a whole thing of study that I did, and I became aware of that. The Pleiadians are the ones that kind of guided me to do the anchoring light transmission meditation. And the Arcturians show up, and it's interesting, I'm wearing this color because I started seeing lime green everywhere, lime green. And of course I'm having all kind of moldavites all over me now. And I come to realize very clearly that when I started my spiritual path, going to the New York Spiritual Science Center, I was in my very late 20s, early 30s, and I have a vivid memory of going into a place in a dream experience that was like very sterile, bright light, and it had like tables like how you would see in a hospital. I remember that vividly. And I've come to find out something later on, that's neither here nor there at the moment, but that was my first memory of having some sort of extraterrestrial contact. And then later on, I go to South America. I go to Lake Titicaca. I'm doing the anchoring light transmission meditations. Consciousness is going high and quickly. Go to Lake Titicaca. I didn't even know how to pronounce the word Titicaca. I didn't know it existed. I must have missed school that day when they talk about it being the highest lake. I said, I didn't know about it. How do you even start? That's when these sacred journeys started. I don't speak Spanish. I most certainly don't speak, the native languages there. And I just said, okay, how do you do this? Everything was divinely orchestrated. This lady who was part of the anchoring light meditation, Sheena, right, blonde hair, blue eyes, beautiful, petite. She says, "Oh, I lived in Puna for years, and I speak Spanish." I'm like, "What?" And I would love to do, a tour over to Peru. I'm like, "What?" Well, here's your chance. Everything fell into place, and we took this trip over to Peru, to Lake Titicaca, and connection with the Ascended Masters. And then all of this like connect the dots starts to come together again, expanding consciousness. And so as I started the anchoring light meditation, it was rapid, very rapid in the unfoldment of consciousness. And the people who, thousands of people have participated in the anchoring light now. It is really a transmission somebody sent to me through Theosophy from years ago, groups that got together just like how we do, that do the exact same thing. And first there was a connection with the extraterrestrials who connected us to a higher level, but now we don't need the extraterrestrials as much. We go directly to the ascended masters.
So is this
That's
what
who I
took
work
place?
with.
Is this what took place when you took this trip to Lake Titicaca?
Yeah, it ignited it. I was always on it. We were on it, but it's like it started to, well, okay, so I went twice. This is all the journey that we're on. I actually went twice. When I went first to Peru and to Lake Titicaca, and doing that whole thing. And every place we went, we prayed for the land. I had a portable altar, so we put down the thing and put the right, and we all hold hands and we're all praying. That's the whole purpose, right? We're all doing that. And with leaving, I hear in my head telepathically, "You'll be back." Next year, I'm back in Bolivia because Pumapunku. Who ever heard of Pumapunku? I don't know Pumapunku, but it's like you go to Pumapunku because what I understand from the Palladians, information is stored in bone and stone. Bone and stone. It was important to go and touch these ancient stones. All right. And it's an exchange. It's not only that we're receiving information, we're also given information. So it's like a triggering. And when I went on these sacred trips, there were other people, other light workers from around the world doing the same thing. We couldn't even speak each other's language, but we all knew why we were there. So the second trip, I went to Bolivia, to Pumapunku, and they have there the island of the moon and the island of the sun. And the island of the moon, most ancient place, was known as the wisdom keepers for the women, back that held that energy there. And the island of the sun was primarily the men. And they're not sure how old Pumapunku is. That's the one with the big H, gigantic. These stones are gigantic. And, this was not done by any caveman, that's for sure. I mean,
that was featured on Ancient Aliens.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So that's where I was. And many years ago, so I was laying on the rocks. I was touching the rocks. I don't think you could do that anymore. But back then, and just getting the information, had visions of all these underground canals underneath there. This is an ancient place, the gateway of the sun. So this was a full immersion into everything. And at the island of the sun, we, dressed in white, doing a ceremony. How I got connected with the guy is another story too. His name is Mojisto, Luis Mojisto. He has encounters with ETs and with the ascended masters that are around that Lake Titicaca area. Okay, he doesn't speak English. I don't speak Spanish. It's just amazing through Google translation, okay, how this all came about. And what I've come to find, when you just listen, they take good care of you. First class all the way, no problems whatsoever. So, but what happened at Island of the Sun, all of a sudden, because it's such a large lake, it has its own weather system. Yeah. So it was gray, but then the clouds parted, the sun came, and a sunbeam hit me right here. I would just remember that so clearly, right like that. At the end of our trip, Louis just had his book translated into English. And so as a gift, he gave us the book, that he wrote about his experiences. And I look at the last page and it shows the exact initiation that happened where the clouds part, the sun comes in and it hits you here. And it's after that trip to Bolivia that the Cosmic Center Spiritual Light started. The time was now.
When you were in Peru, did you hear about a place called Marcahuasi?
I think I know of Marco Wasi. Is that where they have the large
The
uh,
huge
geographic? Yes. Yeah. I
yeah.
have not been there, but I know I read about it and heard about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very, very ancient. It's
Yeah, it is.
very, very ancient. And there's a lot of information, you know, that's there that can be energetic exchange. What I found so wonderful is like when you're called to go to these special places, okay, it's other people that are doing. So I also went to England, to Avebury, and also to Stonehenge, to the Wessex Triangle of England. And this was profound because the message was to go there, that there was a crop circle of importance, some information was to come.
Mm.
And we got to go to the crop circle conference, which was great.
Oh,
So
wow.
all the noted people were there. It was just really awesome. And so, you know, you do have to put on boots and schlep across a lot of, you know, so a lot of land, you know, so, you know, we did all of that. But what was amazing about that is that I had this mystic little pendant, and I got it at a Cryon conference, actually, Cryon. And at the time, you know, money was limited, but I felt so strong I had to get that. And so anyway, a small group of us, we go over there, we're going to different crop circles, we're going on the plains, we're looking at the crop circle, totally immersed into it. And it was this one time that they wanted to go to this crop circle, and I really wanted to go to another one. And I got a little indignant too. I was like, I'm going to the other one. Anyway, end up going to this one, right? And then everybody's going in one direction. I said, you know, we should do our prayer here. We should put the altar in here. So we put the altar, and I put that mystic topaz on this thing. It was called the cathedral. That was the name of it, the cathedral. And so we said our prayers and you did our regular thing and so forth. And then after that, we left. We were then getting ready to leave to come back home, you know, to the States. And we wanted to see, you know, what was the new crop circles, but it was raining that day. So they're not able to take the pictures because of the weather. So we ended up leaving, and then we finally got to Atlanta, where we had the first opportunity, like, to go on the website and take a look. And lo and behold, that area where we put the mystic topaz there, okay, another crop circle attached to it. I know that crop circle could attach to another crop circle, and it did it a third time. And it looked very much about the divine feminine. The way it was done, how that look is, I don't have it. You could, you know, go back and look the year, what is called the cathedral. It actually morphed 1, 2, 3 times.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And so the message on that was, this was very important. The message was, we can't do this unless you do this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a group endeavor. This is the same with the ascended masters. They need us like we need them. We are, in fact, part of the spiritual hierarchy. I say that we are the boots on the ground. What we choose to do to follow our soul pulse is so important, because it is integrated with the collective of many other layers of the ascension plan. And that's why I tell people, if you think that you're supposed to write a book, write the book. If you used to have a podcast, do the podcast. If you feel you're supposed to do it. That it's falling into a light, because there's this whole interconnectedness, this entanglement, if you will, okay, of a much broader plan, that everybody has their puzzle piece, and how important your puzzle piece is. And we are each other's teachers, and we are each other's students, and we're here to trigger each other, you know, to do what we've come to do collectively.
Yeah.
I can see why you helped Susan.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah, her
just amazing.
Is so far out there, and
I said, hey, we understand, we love you. I understand completely. And you know, just to answer that, there's so many people. We know this can be a very lonely path. This can be a very isolated path. Who do you even talk to? You know what I
Right.
mean? Can you imagine that now we have the opportunity to talk as freely as we do right now about topics? There are more and more people opening up and being more open.
It's true.
But part of the Cosmic Center purpose and mission was for other people, and also the anchoring light was for other light workers to know other light workers.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not crazy. There are other people that think this way too. It's like finding your tribe, that we lift each other up, because what I tell a lot of, particularly your millennials, your younger people, I said, you know what? You're not crazy. The world is crazy. That's what's crazy. You're good.
Can anybody
You're
come
good.
to
That's the craziness.
can anybody come to your center?
Was that? Oh, yes.
Anybody? Okay, so it's open to the public.
Do you have like a bookshop, or do you do readings there? Or what takes place?
We have the whole gamut. Primarily, we are an educational and healing center.
Uh-huh.
So we do, and people could go on our website, www.ccosl.com, which stands for Cosmic Center of Spiritual Light. And by the way, the word cosmic came way back when. To use that, I really had to push for that name to manifest itself. And it is because of that name cosmic that has attracted like noted illuminaries from around the world.
Oh,
We
interesting.
just had Dr. J.J. Hurtak, of the Keys of Enoch. He goes to these major conferences. He came to our little center here, which
Oh,
was
wow.
quite a big deal. Another lady by the name of Mirabai, just like, well, of course, William Henry, all the guys there, the ancient aliens that I know, they've come over here, which is great. But pre-COVID, we had many things here talking about UFOs or, other topics that are noteworthy. And then during COVID, I actually did have a dream experience regarding that. And I was in Nashville. I work 6 weeks out of the year. I don't get paid to do this. The universe has orchestrated things in such a way that I work 6 weeks out of the year. I'm an expert in Medicare and on corporate enrollments. So I happened to be in Nashville at the time, and I was guided to bring this book. I said, I don't have time to do this, because when you work those 6 weeks, you work, they're like, you're working those 6 weeks. But it turned out that for a week, I had nothing to do. All I could do was sit at a cubicle. And I often laugh. I said, if somebody was clairvoyant, you'd probably see a Lewish kind of a light coming into my little cubicle at the time, because I was downloading so much stuff was coming in, at that particular time. So you just never know. You have to be in the moment. But it was during that time that I got the guidance about getting the technology together. Get your technology together. So when I came back, I was like, we got to get our technology together. I didn't know why. And sure enough, when COVID hit, we had an easy transition, right? We never skipped a beat.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for very much for coming on
Yes.
to our podcast.
And of course, we could talk for another 5 hours.
Yeah.
But
Good. We'd love to come to your
Really
center,
enjoy it.
Sharon-Elizabeth, at some point.
yes, I'd love that.
We like
Yeah.
Sarasota.
Absolutely. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Rob and Trish. I felt so comfortable because of the light that we all are, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
I thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll send you the
So
link
thank
when it
you.
goes up. So thank
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That'll
Okay.
be awesome. Okay.
Bye now.
Take care. Bye.